this next guy that's coming up to share, I really don't know a whole lot about him except I know that he's really freaking funny. I've seen him do stand-up at Go Bananas, and when I was actually our first Cincy stories that we ever did, it was like the weepiest Cincy stories that you could think of. Like, this has been pretty lighthearted, pretty fun. The first one was everybody was just like bearing their soul, the deepest thing that they could ever share, that they never even shared in front of a crowd, that they probably maybe need to go to therapy for. They were sharing at Cincy Stories. So I was like, I really need to get somebody lighthearted, somebody that can at least tell us jokes, even if they're sharing something serious. And so I was like, all right, who am I going to talk to? I don't know any comedians personally, but I love stand-up comedy. And I know I've seen a few local stand-up comedians, and I thought of Alex. So Alex Stone is a local stand-up comedian. He's actually in New York now, but he's from Cincinnati. And he's doing a lot of cool stuff. So let's invite Alex Stone here to share his story.
Thank you. One more time for Sean, and then for everybody that you've heard tell a story so far tonight. Usually in stand-up comedy, you give someone an intro that's bringing you up, but this is the first one I've ever had where my intro is he's not going to make you cry, which it was not told to me in the description of what I had to do tonight, so I may have fucked up on preparing. Maybe shouldn't have swore immediately. Fuck yeah. I mean, I think prepared, but that's always fun. In 2011, I ran the Flying Pig Marathon, and that always feels gross to say out loud because there's no way to tell people that you ran a marathon without it sounding like you're bragging about running a marathon, right? Like, even if you do it casually, it just sounds worse. Like, if you're like, I ran a marathon or whatever, it's no big deal. Everyone's just left there to be like, really? Is it no big deal? Is that why you accidentally put that bumper sticker on your car? Is that what happened there? You begrudgingly posted those pictures on Facebook? I see what's happening. No one likes to talk about the marathon that you ran, which is why the worst part of running a marathon is telling people that you're running a marathon, right? When I decided to run the Flying Pig, and I subsequently started telling people that I was going to be doing it, I told some friends, and the most common response that I got, and I don't know if this says more about the people that I am friends with or about people's knowledge of marathons in general, but more than once, I told a person that I was running the Flying Pig, and they looked at me and they went, oh, you know you're going to shit your pants, right? Well, this was a good talk. Thank you for believing in me. I appreciate that. In their defense, that does happen, but not often enough that should be the first thing you think of when I say the word marathon. And it doesn't happen to everyone who runs. If it did, no one would run them, right? One person ever would have run 26.2 miles, and then he would have been like, guys, I can't tell you why, but don't do that, okay? That is not a good thing to do. We're going to do a no questions asked policy on this. One of my friends, I told I was running a marathon, and he said, he said it was going to shorten my life. He was like, his logic being that your heart only beats so many times in your lifetime that I was just using all of mine up early on some stupid marathon. My friend told me this while he was actively eating McDonald's, so I took that with a grain of salt. The other thing people ask you when you tell them that you're running a marathon is they ask why. They want to know why you are running. And 2 weeks before I decided to run the Flying Pig, there was a small U.S. Army convoy moving through the mountains of Afghanistan. And according to the official report, they were out on patrol. This was sometime in the evening. And about an hour into their drive, one of the armored vehicles was struck by an IED. That's an improvised explosive device. They were then attacked by a small group of insurgents, and there was a fight. And when it ended, one of the soldiers that was in the armored vehicle that was struck by the IED was airlifted to a nearby military hospital in Kandahar, Afghanistan. And the next day, on September 27th, 2010, that soldier died from the injuries that he sustained. That soldier's name was Donald Scott Morrison. He was 23 years old. He was from Cincinnati, Ohio, and he was one of my best friends. If you've never had someone close to you die while serving in the military. I'll try and give you a quick run through of what it's like as it happened to me. This is why I told you that I kind of fucked up with the laughing part. I told him, I said, this is what will happen as I experienced it. First thing that's going to happen to you is you're going to get a call at 2:30 in the morning from your friend Brandon, and you're not going to answer it because it's 2:30 in the morning. Why are you calling me? I'm not going to pick that up. And then a few minutes later, you're going to get another call from Brandon's mom, Dawn. You're not going to pick that up either for the same reason, right? But she's going to leave a message, and through tears, she's going to tell you that you need to call Brandon back quickly. So you do, and you pick up the phone, you dial his number, and he's also crying. And he tells you, and his exact words are, that Scott is not going to be coming home from Afghanistan. Now after that, 5 minutes or 2.5 hours will go by. No idea. Never has a sentence so simple been so difficult for you to understand. Now later that night, you're going to end up at Scott's parents' house, and you don't know why you're there, but you don't know what else to do. And your time there is going to be spent in the living room, and it's going to be spent silently with a lot of long stares happening all around you. The next day, you're going to feel everything, right? You're going to feel confused. You're going to feel angry. You're going to be angry at him. You're going to be angry at the military. You're going to be angry at the government for sending children to die fighting the wars of a few old men, right? You're going to be angry at yourself for not doing more to talk him out of going and enlisting in the military, right? But most of all, you're just going to feel very, very sad. The next day, you and your friends are going to drive out to a small airport in Fairfield behind jungle gyms that you didn't even know existed. And you're going to stand behind a small chain link fence. You're going to watch as a very large cargo plane lands and then subsequently takes a flag-draped casket out of the back of it. Then they put that in a car, and that car drives away. The next day, that's the visitation. That happens at the Blue Ash Rec Center here in Cincinnati. And you're going to be blown away by all of the people that show up to say goodbye to Scott and to show their love for his family. It's going to be the only high in a week that's very, very low for you. The next day is the last day, and it's the hardest day because that is the day of the funeral. And if you've never been to a military funeral, it's a very morbidly beautiful thing because the precision and the silence in which the honor guard moves is stunning, right? There's the flags and there's the outfits. That's the wrong word, but they're dressed in military garb. And it's very powerful. It's a powerful tribute. But it's also a very unfulfilling and empty one because the same movements that are so impressive from the honor guard are also cold and expressionless. They're robotic. They're rehearsed. And it becomes very clear to you that's just their job. This is not a funeral for your friends. It's just a funeral for another soldier. They're just here because they have to be, not because they want to be. Then a woman from the military representative, she's going to get up, and she's going to say a few words about your friend, and she's going to tell you that he was a very good, courageous, and brave soldier, and you're going to sit there and you think, that's fine, but he was so much more than that. And I know he was. You're just saying that he was, right? I know that kid as a kid that grew up in Blue Ash. He went to Sycamore High School. I know that he was in a band called Trying for Tomorrow, and they were terrible, but we tried really hard. I know that he loved sports so much that he got too competitive for them to be any fun when you would play with them. I know that he loved Applebee's, and I have no idea why he did that. I know that he was a son and a brother and an uncle, and I know that he was only 23 years old. And that's the hardest pill to swallow. He's just a kid. He's 23. And that really hits you at the cemetery because that's when it ends. That's when it's over. The whole week, there's something else to do. But after that, you leave, and he stays there. You're not going to see him again. And you are faced with what's happened to him, and you got to look inside what's going on with you. And you realize that his time is gone. No more time. 23 years old. And at the time, I was 24. I had already been given more time than he got to have, and I had done nothing with it. I had done nothing with the time that I had been given. I had quit everything I had ever done. I dropped out of high school when I was 18 years old. I got my GED. I didn't go to college. I quit every job I ever had, every relationship I had ever been in, right? Nothing had been accomplished. I was doing comedy at that point, but passively. I didn't really care about it. I didn't know. I was just waiting for someone to tap me on the shoulder and give me $1 million. I thought that's how life worked. It may sound stupid to you sitting there, you're listening to this and you may know this already, but when I was 24 years old, I had lived a very sheltered and no other way to put it, privileged life. Like I didn't realize that life could be taken from you that quickly. I could die young. That could be me, right? Life is not just a sequence of the best possible outcomes. Sometimes it goes very wrong very quickly, and I had a crisis because I hadn't done anything, and I knew that that all needed to change very quickly, right? Not because of some, selfish reasons, but I felt very guilty. It felt disrespectful to me that I had wasted so much time when my friend had no more left to have. And so I needed something that I could do, something that I could start, and more importantly, something that I could finish, and I needed that to happen very quickly. When you sign up for the Flying Pig, you do it online, and there is a point where they ask you to predict and put down how fast you think you can run the marathon. And they do that so that they can order you by pace at the beginning, so there's not a big clusterfuck at the beginning. And so I don't know what time I put down, but I do know that it was incorrect. It was not right. Because I trained for the race, but in my haste to do everything, I didn't do enough research, and I found out that about mile 7 in the Flying Pig, there's a giant hill that you come to, and calling it a hill is disrespectful. It's like running up a half pipe. It's just straight up Eden Park, which I think is bullshit, right? Someone mapped out that course and left that in, right? What? It's a marathon. No one was sitting around like, you know what the problem with these are? They're not hard enough. We need to really up the difficulty level of the marathons. It's like when you're a child and you spend all this time in school learning math, and then one day they just throw algebra at you, and you're like, what the fuck is this? Letters, it was hard enough with the numbers. We were all fine with how hard it was with just the numbers. I don't need another thing. But I was running this race for a purpose, right? For a reason. I knew what I needed to do. So I ran all the way up that hill, you guys. I ran all the way up, and I got to the top. And when I did, I felt so good about myself that I immediately stopped running. I stopped so quickly. I believed in my heart that my friend Scott would understand that I was very tired. I was a very tired person. I didn't quit. Quitting was not an option, but walking was such a beautiful option at that point. And that's what I did for the remainder of the race. I alternated between walking and running, until eventually the deal I made with myself is that I would run when I saw my parents, because my parents got up very early and they drove me to the race. They were following me around the city, rushing from point to point, and it felt very rude to just stroll by them like, whew, this is tough, you know what I mean? So I would run by them, and when they would leave, I would start walking again. And that's the other reason I don't like telling people that I ran a marathon, because I didn't do it well. You know what I mean? I didn't do a good job. I did it, but not very good. The other deal I made with myself happened at mile 17, because I was walking, because my parents weren't around, and all of a sudden, as I'm walking, these two old women passed me on each side. And they weren't 90, but they were old enough that I was like, that's embarrassing. And I was like, I can't lose to two old women. So I started running. I ran for what felt like 2 days, and I got far enough that I started walking again until a few minutes later they passed me again on the other side, and I was like, what the fuck? And so I started running again, and I kept doing that. It became like a race within a race. Like it was a very like a tortoise and the hare situation, except there were two tortoises, and I am bald, so that's how that worked. So that kept up for the entirety of the race until I got to the final mile, because I knew that I couldn't walk the final mile. That just seemed ridiculous, because when you get to the last mile, you can hear the crowd cheering for the runners as they pass the finish line. And as you thunder towards the end, you see just the sidewalks are lined with people, just strangers, friends, family, other runners that have finished, and they're just sticking around to cheer you on. And it's very powerful. It pushes you to keep going. And so I'm running, and I see my parents, and they see me running, so that was good. And I crossed the finish line, and before I had ran the race, in my training, I had been watching documentaries and listening to stories of marathons, and I'd always get very emotional at the end, because you see people just break down, and they start weeping at the end. They've done such an incredible thing that they didn't think that they could do, and I just felt the whole time I was running, I was like, I'm going to cry when I crossed the finish line. I was running for a very emotional reason. And I crossed the finish line, and I hear nothing but these people chanting and just screaming at me that you did it, you did it, you did it. And I remember being overcome with the thought that I am never going to do that again. It's just not fun. It hurts. It's painful. I don't know how anyone has the energy to cry. How do you have the energy to do anything but be exhausted? I was like, I would love to cry, but I'm trying to breathe right now, and that's taking up all of my time. But after I caught my breath, they hand you a medal when you get to the end of the race. And I remember looking at that, and I did have a real moment where I was like, I didn't do it well, but I did do it. I did something. I finished. I started, and I finished something. And I don't want to marginalize someone's death by making it all about me. Scott was a truly incredible person, and they just recently dedicated a stretch of highway to him on 71 between Ronald Reagan and 275. It's the Donald Scott Morrison Memorial Highway. Maybe you've seen it. You'll see it next time you drive up there. Sure, you can clap for that. And I remember a year after I ran the race, I went to Scott's dad's house, who is the same house that I went to the night that he died. And he still lives in Blue Ash. He's a fireman there. And I walked inside, and the living room is different now. The living room is just covered with pictures and flags, and it's just a memorial to Scott. And in the middle of the room, there's a very large glass case. And that glass case is filled with badges and medals that Scott was awarded during and after he died, during his life and after he died. And those are very important. Those medals are very important to his father and to Scott's memory, but they're also very hard to be around because they're just such a harsh reminder that he is gone, and they do nothing but remind you of the person that he was. And I remember leaving his house that day, and I felt very lucky that I would get to go home and see a medal that I had that wasn't mine. This is not my medal. This is Scott's medal, because it's a medal that I can look at, and it doesn't speak to who he was. It speaks to nothing but who he continues to be, and that's a person that's very important to me and everyone who knew him, and someone that pushes me and everyone who knew him to keep moving forward. So thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your night.